what does wealth and money mean to you?
Culture, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. These are the 4 goals given to every human being. You are Indian, you are American, or any part of the world, does not matter. These goals are common. Dharma, righteous ways. Artha, righteous earning. This is the wealth part of it. Kama, righteous desires. And finally, Moksha, the ultimate realization of the truth, which we call as Moksha or Atma Sakshatkara. So wealth is only a part of the process which should help you to attain the higher desires, which is not just your welfare but everybody's welfare, and at the end attain the ultimate truth, which is union with the divine. So unless you lead a selfless life and you fulfill selfless desires using your wealth in the right way, wealth has no meaning at all. In fact, it can become detrimental to your own spiritual progress. So wealth is only an instrument, a means, and it's not the end. But unfortunately, in the modern times, wealth has become the end of everything. Why are you studying this subject? Because this is what is going to give us the best, salary job at the end. Why mechanisms? Force multiplier is do anything, initiate anything which will include everyone in it as it progresses. That is force multiplier. You start anything which will help 100 others, not just you. By enabling them also to lead better lives, that kind of an action is force multiplier. It could be wealth, it could be a business, it could be education, it could be healthcare, it could be any act, even a kind word. When it increases, like today what is happening, it's a force multiplier because you all have come together, investors have come with good intentions to promote and protect entrepreneurs and give them the right opportunities. And imagine one company that comes up will give so many jobs, each of them will be a better citizen, they will be able to handle their lives better. That way they'll contribute to the GDP. The indirect effects of it will be better tax collection that will go into public expenditure, social investments, thereby better education, better healthcare, better consumerism. So this is force multiplier. Do anything that will improve the lives of everybody around you. That is force multiplier.
Very true and very well said. The name of one entrepreneur that you believe has been, that has made a difference to this country?
There are plenty of them, but I think from the economic standpoint, I think Tatas are the best examples of entrepreneurship. And they started way back when there was nothing in place. We were not even an independent country. In those days when they started, and look at the model, it was not just about making money. That was never the priority. Money was only the means to the ends. Entrepreneurship is about people who provide solutions. So when you provide solutions, your right is only to the action solutions. So when you provide solutions, your right is only to the action. That's what Bhagavad Gita says. You define how much, in 6 months I'll be a unicorn. This is the most abused word, I think, in the present times. Unless I become a unicorn, I don't want to start this business. Why? Because this is not going to make me a unicorn. So what if it's solving a social problem and really giving people, some kind of benefit? So this idea is karmanyavadhikaristha. You do things because you want to solve a problem, provide a solution, create value, and valuation will follow. So that is the straight away. But one more shloka of Bhagavad Gita I want to bring to your notice. It says, Yadyada charati shrestha tatta devetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadnuvartate, which means as the noble people conduct themselves in the society, the ordinary ones follow them. Therefore, creating right examples is very important. In the last 3-4 years, the entrepreneurship models that have come up, they are very misleading. So they suddenly had a steep rise and a steep fall, we all know by now. And those who went to public bourses, they came back humiliated because public understood it, saw through this whole valuation game. So the idea is that you created wrong examples and wrong expectations out of entrepreneurship. But true reason why one should be an entrepreneur is because one really feels like solving a problem which is plaguing the society and giving a solution which is acceptable, accessible, affordable. That is the idea of entrepreneurship. So I think set right kind of examples. And as industry leaders, I think it's very important that you provide them with the right kind of narrative, right messaging, that entrepreneurship is about providing solutions, not about creating valuations, but creating value for the society. So that also Bhagavad Gita says, please conduct yourselves correctly, behave well, set an example for the rest of the country or next generation to follow. I think that also should be taken from there.
Everyone actually talks about valuations, right? But you've always spoken about value creation through free education, free nutrition, and free healthcare.
Yes.
Now, how does one sustain oneself in this sort of a model where everything is free. And I know you do it with all your institutions. And how have you pushed them to become self-sustaining?
Yeah, it's free for the beneficiary. It's not free to the organization. That's obvious. So the beneficiary must get it free because the beneficiary is incapable of paying for it. That is the simple thing. But does he need it? Yes, he needs it badly more than you and me. Can he pay for it? No, he cannot. So therefore, we have to provide it free to them. Most of our patients who come to us are from below poverty line kind of a segment. Most of our students come from rural areas, many of them from BPL. And I more importantly feel that education, health, nutrition, these are fundamental human rights. Everybody should be provided these. And this is the responsibility of the entire society, not just of the government or not just of an NGO, but everybody in the society should be sensitive to the idea that if somebody is incapable of accessing these fundamental rights, then they have to step up and provide for it. That is the basic idea. We give it free. How do we sustain it? I believe in the power of goodness and selflessness. How a family, a father would look after the children and won't charge. A mother won't call the son and say, today's dosa costs 20 rupees because it comes with masala in the breakfast. She gives it what she needs to give for the child because it's our collective responsibility. So far, we've been able to provide all these services, collectively up to $200 million worth services in the last 1 decade alone. And this happened only because of people like you who had the heart to share what they had with those who did not have. And we were just conduits or channels to bridge the gap between the two. So this is how it happened. I firmly believe that it will happen in the future as well. And I think India is becoming more and more charitable. Gone are the days of the 60s and 70s when life was a struggle. People were trying to make the two ends meet. But I think India is much wealthier than what it was. And it's no more about the lower parts of the Maslow's hierarchy, the security and social needs. It's about little more than that. Yeah, I think self-actualization. People are finding meaning and purpose in giving back. And I think in the next 25 years, India will give back much more than what it has given in the last 75 years. For two reasons. One, people have more than what they require, and they will open up to the idea that we must grow together. Two, I feel that the next generation is far more sensitive to this idea of giving than the previous ones. Naturally, they're coming from a different background. Soon after independence, no jobs, economic progress was slow, no opportunities. So they had this idea of holding back, withholding, for the sake of, secure future. But I think the next generation, especially, have a lot of hopes from Gen Z. And I feel they're very eclectic in their choices and they really question authority and they want to find new ways of living and not follow the old pattern. So they are the ones I think who will be really contributing to society at large, and I feel these organizations will continue to flourish because of the kind people in the society.
One of ISF's fundamental theme this year, I think, is something very close to your heart, on rural startups. I think you've always talked about that. How do you believe we create more opportunities to actually support them? And this year, I know we focused on agri-tech, health tech, ed-tech, clean energy, as some of the areas. So what do you think are the sort of opportunities for these startups, and what should we do to create more in the future?
I think to give you a context of why agri-startups or anything to do with rural economies are going to flourish, I'm sure you all know it, otherwise you wouldn't get into the business in the first place. But I always tell, we live in an India which is not one India, but maybe three Indias. The top 10% of Indians are those who are very well-to-do. As I was mentioning to you just now, that their per capita is probably $12,500-13,000. And all the startups are after their money and after them. This top 120 million or so, they are the ones everybody is after. The second rung, tier 2, tier 3 cities, this consists of another 100 million people who have per capita of maybe $3,000 or $3,500. That is the difficult market because they're very picky and choosy and they won't just part with their money like that. Unless they really see value in it, they won't do that. And that is a difficult segment, but probably as big a segment as it is in the first tier. But the biggest segment is the third segment, what is called the bottom of the pyramid or so. Almost probably 1.2 billion people there. But their per capita may not be as high because naturally they are coming from agriculture, they are coming from small industries, small scale enterprises, and with a per capita of less than 100, maybe $1,500 or so. But the good part is that there is a possibility to scale things there. And anything that can be scaled will be successful in India. Premium ideas may succeed for some times and may not succeed another time. But anything that can be scaled will definitely succeed. So a lot of attention is shifting towards this tier 2, tier 3s only because it can provide you with scale. And it's a basic thumb rule. If any product you can sell to 300 million people, you know that you are going to be a successful company. And where are the 300 million people to sell to? They're at the bottom of the pyramid, but they will pay a price as it is comfortable for them. So I think the economies of scale is the model for startups to get into that space. But more than that, I personally feel that over the next 25, 30 years, incomes are going to increase in that bottom of the pyramid also. They will start competing with the tier 2, tier 3 cities, and tier 2, tier 3 cities will go to the tier 1 kind of income segment. So opportunities will naturally open up for us, but more than that, I think problems lie there, and nobody has given solutions to those problems to them, because it's not quick bucks there. It is a slow and steady kind of a race. And that needs some patience to wait it out. And that patience is what is lacking in this instant culture of the world where everybody wants to become profitable very quickly. I think that is where we need to follow those Tatas and of the past, because they took their time to grow into what they have grown into. They may not be the richest, whatever the company in the country, but they have created the maximum value for the people. So that is the idea. If we will follow, definitely there is so much that can be done at the lower half of the pyramid. So many problems, but every problem is an opportunity according to me, and this opportunity is waiting for all of you. So please think that way. I think government is coming with very progressive policies when it comes to agricultural sector. Investments are coming, sustainable agriculture, what you call circular economy. All these are the things which even from the climate point of view are becoming very important. Because we all have to eat. We may not wear the same thing, we may not live in the same houses, drive the same cars, but we all have to eat our food every day. And that's why this is the most important sector that needs to be kind of influenced with right kind of entrepreneurship. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and big companies should look that side and also help the rural economies to grow through rural entrepreneurship.
One of the things startups always struggle with is this divide between capitalism and socialism. Where I think the motto many times is about wealth creation for themselves. But you've spoken about something called compassionate capitalism a lot of times and quoted a couple of companies in the country. So it would be wonderful to hear that from you in terms of what is compassionate capitalism and what is the lesson for all of us in this room to take away and implement in our respective organizations in some form and shape.
Very true. As you said it, that capitalism has been a model for certain developed countries, but we have still seen the social divide over there. Not everybody progressed in their progress. Socialism also has not succeeded. Most of the time it has led to a kind of a disoriented kind of a social structure and entitlements, which has not led to any good for those countries as well. Now, India is much older than the history books, that whatever is said in the recorded history. And we have definitely mastered the art of wealth creation and value creation over several centuries, maybe even millennia. We might have forgotten, but if you go back and look at our principles of economics that we followed, Artha Shastra is there. It always talked about the welfare of all. It was, in a way, welfare economics. So compassionate capitalism is truly a kind of a welfare economic model where you must make profits, but at what cost? At what price? That is the question. Not at the cost of the environment, not at the cost of the have-nots, not at the cost of ethics and governance. All these put together is compassionate capitalism. You earn money, you make profits, but not at the cost of all these things which are non-negotiables according to our scriptures. So Dharma should be the basis of creating Artha, and Dharma is righteous way of doing things. And compassionate capitalism should be founded on this principle of Dharma, that everybody's welfare should be included, including plants, trees, animals, water bodies, mountains, and environment as climate and everything else. And ethics and governance, of course, cannot be compromised. Then once you create the profit by doing the right things, this means your products and services are truly solving a problem. They are real solutions, not imaginary, funky, fancy solutions which are being pushed down the throats of unwilling consumers through heavy marketing and advertisement. It's not that kind of a solution. Real solution, and whatever profits comes out of it. I know all companies will have to pay taxes. That's your duty. But beyond the call of duty is to do more than just paying your taxes by reaching out to those unreached segments of the society which will not get that benefit even from the government's point of view. So there is that segment which is left behind, and they can never reach the same level unless somebody goes out and reaches out for them. Many of you have come from middle class or lower middle class families, and you have crossed the chasm or the bridge, but there are many who are left behind. Somebody has to go back for them. So compassionate capitalism also includes going back and reaching out to those who have still not crossed the chasm. And that should be the extra responsibility. That in India, 2% CSR being mandated, it's kind of hinting towards that compassionate capitalism, but it has come as a part of the government mandate, and I'm proud that India, at least, it is mandated. In most of the countries it is not, including large Western countries, it is not mandated. But Tatas, like people, were doing it even before. There were no rules at that time, yet they did what was needed to be done. So that is compassionate capitalism. I think if all capitalism takes that a little compassionate attitude, so many problems of the world can be solved. We are a $100+ trillion world GDP, GWP as they say. Yet we have hundreds of millions of people who don't have access to water, clean water, or electricity, energy, shelter, education. More than 300 million children are out of school at this point in time as we sit and talk. And probably in India, 400 million will go hungry to bed this night, this evening. What is happening is the question. I'm sure there is a possibility for us to do more than just make profits with good governance. I'm sure the ESG is what we're talking about. E is okay, G is okay, but the S part also has to be really paid attention to. And that S part is beyond the call of duty. It's not duty, it's beyond the call of duty, because you are getting penalized for the E part of it. You will definitely get penalized for the G part of it, but nobody penalizes you for the S part of it, So everybody is like, S is scot-free. You don't get stuck there. So, but I think that is where your beyond the call of duty comes, and compassionate capitalism should emphasize the role of this S, the social part of it, in all companies. And that is what I think India can build its corporate structure based on these principles. And see how lucky we are. When one way of saying is in 75 years we didn't reach our true potential. Fine, bygones are bygones. Now what is that? We are at the cusp of a glorious future. And let us do it right is all that I'm trying to tell every one of you. Western countries have done it, but they haven't done it right. Eastern countries have done some of them, they have not done it right. It's our chance to teach the world how to do it right. As they say, show them how to do it. That is what India's chance is right now. So do it right, do it in an inclusive way, do it in a compassionate way. I'm sure we will all prosper together. That is the idea of compassionate capitalism.
Thank you. So is around Viksit Bharat that we keep hearing a lot about these days. One of the biggest goals that India has is getting to become the $5 trillion economy by 2024. How do you believe people in this room with their startups can actually contribute to this particular goal?
I was just mentioning to you even behind that $5 trillion economy is given. That is the growth trajectory we are on. Not from today, but for the last 20 years we've been growing that way. That we will go and hit the $5 trillion economy unless and until another COVID happens, God forbid. But otherwise we are set to go there. We have a young population, as a working age population. Entrepreneurs like you are contributing to this growth. And more than that, even if you don't give opportunity to the young population, the survival instincts will kick in. They'll find a way to survive and grow. Whatever be the business model, ethical, unethical, but 5 trillion will be achieved at some point in time. But the idea is that, is it being achieved by including the women of the country, the other part of the country? I don't think that the representation of women in the workforce or in the management leadership positions, again, you know better because you are coming from that background. Is it including the rural geographies? Is it including that bottom of the pyramid? I do not think this $5 trillion dream is including all of that. So if you can include all of them also, the women of the country and the rural geographies, it will be not $5 trillion, it will be probably $10 trillion, because we are leaving almost half of the country behind and only catering to half of the country's needs, and yet we are going to become a $5 trillion economy. So the idea is that if you include them all as entrepreneurs, you think differently. I'm sure the cost of your whatever enterprise will be low, because the workforce available at that rural, if they can be skilled a bit, they are much cheaper labor. I'm not saying you should exploit them, but then that is the reality. You must worry about your bottom line, and that comes from there. And I'm sure the productivity of workforce can be grown faster than the cost of labor in India. For next 25 years, we focus on the rural geography, skill our youngsters, the rural youngsters. We will create a very productive workforce which is cheaper than most of the workforce available in around the world. And that can be the model for rural geographies. If you include them in, and rural shows like one of the companies, that's precisely what it is doing. It started in 2003 or so. 2013, and now it has all become a force to reckon with, because it has created skilled workforce at the rural level. At rural level, what you can do is to skill them, include them in this growth story, and don't leave them behind. And that's a cheaper labor. It will make your enterprise more profitable. That is a win-win situation, isn't it? Why should you ignore that? Absolutely. So my idea is that look at this median age of India, 28 years. 70% of these 28 years is in rural areas, not in the urban areas. They need education, they need skilling, they need all whatever the support that you can give. And if you can set up your shop in those geographies, you'll have low cost of labor, inelastic workforce. That's very important. Less attrition, so you don't have to worry about again a cost of employee will be low. And you'll be able to create much value for the rural economies as well. And include them in this dream, not 5 trillion, we'll be 10 trillion then, because that's possible by including everybody, including the women, whose work goes unrecognized, even their household chores. If you put a monetary value to it, we'll be $10 trillion economy. Because they work so hard, but there is no monetization of their efforts.
Very true.
So the idea is that if you include and monetize that part, a lot of agricultural labor is not monetized at all. We do not calculate them as a part of our thing. And most of our consumption, the GDP is coming from where? 50-60% is private consumption. The rest is all exports. So our GDP of 50-60% is all that we are doing. If we can make it 100% consumption, export is surplus above that, definitely we will be better than that. So that my idea is to include everybody, invest in social sectors, invest in education, invest in healthcare, nutrition, skill building, capacity building at the bottom of the pyramid. And I'm sure we can do much better than $5 trillion. $5 trillion will happen, that is given. And we don't have to really pride ourselves by saying we achieve $5 trillion. We are on that growth trajectory. The demography does not allow us to achieve anything less than that unless we are suicidal in our nature. We want to destroy ourselves with a war or a pandemic. That's a different story. But if we are all other factors are in order, $5 trillion will happen, but we can do much better by including that 100 crore people which is in the bottom of the pyramid, and that workforce which is waiting to participate in this growth story, the women and the youngsters of the rural areas, they are to be included. That is what this group can do, is what my call is. That's why this topic, bottom of the pyramid,
Well, I think that's a very strong message to everybody in this room. Don't just go for the tier 1 cities and the guys who can, fund the sort of solutions you're creating. Look at tier 2, tier 3 and the bottom of the pyramid very, very closely as you build out your solutions and take those solutions to market. Your own startups and the ecosystem that you've created, right? One is education. You've always spoken about good education, and that being the only solution to all the problems in society. And you've actually created universities that you guys run, and you give stipend to students, not just free education, right? Where you're paying off for their fees and everything. I think that's fantastic. What made you actually think about this, and what was the need that you were trying to solve for?
I think I should give the background of why the university came into existence. We were running schools for a couple of decades, but children were studying till their 12th or whatever, intermediate as your PUC as we say. After that they were looking for education elsewhere. So then the university came into existence to cater to their higher education needs, especially for the disadvantaged sections which cannot pay a fee in the higher education segment. Because in India, while school education is still compulsory and free at a certain age, after that higher education in most of the part of the world also is not free. You pay for it. And that is where people were dropping out. The dropout rates is very high in India actually compared to that. Only 25% is the gross enrollment ratio into higher education. It means after 12th, only 25% of the entire 12th class whatever pass outs, they get into higher education. 75% does something else. They go and start a puncture shop or a small hotel or anything like that. But that is not their true potential. So that is one thing. Second thing, our university has a very clear goal that we want to create academicians and educationists, because our country lacks 1 million school teachers at this point in time, 300,000 vacancies in our higher education. So you can imagine that you are a country which is a young country where 80,000 children are born every day and they all have to go to school and meet a teacher. But you go to schools which are empty and there is no teacher, not in all the schools. So the issue is that because we haven't worked on creating teachers in the last 2 to 3 decades, everybody wanted to be an engineer or a doctor or an IS officer or something like that. But that idea didn't happen. Now we are running short of our teachers in our schools, and that's a crisis. Where will you send these children to? So this is where we thought we should create inspiration in young generation to become teachers. Now rural teachers only can go to rural schools and teach. So naturally rural children have to become rural teachers and they have to go back to rural schools. So that is the university model. Now including women in it, that's where the stipend thing came, because it was free. So girl children in India on an average get married off by the time they're 18, 19, in villages even 13, 14. Even today it happens, and we have seen it with our eyes. Rules, regulations, law and order is on one side, but what is reality is in the other side. So we saw women getting married and they don't get to go to a job and things like that, not in the rural segments. It's a social norm there. It's nothing evil or right or wrong about it. That is how it is. We have to accept that. So we thought, how can we encourage women to participate? Because God forbid something happens to their husbands or whatever, whomever, financial breadwinner. Then this girl has nowhere to go. The in-laws don't accept her. The parents also reject her. And she does not have enough education to stand on her own 2 feet. And if she has children, they are doomed. So that is the problem that we were seeing in many places. To encourage women to continue their education, we said, graduation is free. Allow the child to study. Anyway, she'll get a graduate degree so that she can stand on her own 2 feet. Parents agreed till the graduation part. But after graduation, we told, if they continue for 1 or 2 years internship with us, we will give them a stipend. And they can do post-graduation also during that period. So they do post-graduation for free and they get a stipend, because parents were not willing to wait after graduation for them to get married. So we told, give them a little more, 2-3 more years, and then they can, get married after that. And what happens during this time? Whatever money they have earned, they can pay for their own marriage expenses. Parents don't have to take loans. That was first logic. Most of the parents bought it. And the second logic was that if you allow them to work with us after post-graduation for 1 or 2 years, they will earn enough to leave behind a good sum for your retirement. Because once they get married and they work after their marriage, they can't contribute to their parents. Everything will go to the in-laws. So you have done so much for your girl child, let her also do her bit for you. So if a person gets a postgraduate degree from an institution, works for another 2 years, they can easily save up to 4 to 5 lakh rupees. That they can leave behind for their parents before they get married. So that also kind of went well with the parents. And we thought, when we are spending crores to get them educated, it's no harm in giving them a monthly stipend to ensure that they don't stop their education halfway through. Now when we give it to girls, naturally it has to be equality, so we have to give it to boys also. And we ensure that all boys and girls in university get their stipend through their internship, through their post-graduation. And after that we absorb them in our organization. I'm very proud to tell you that all our students from our graduation and post-graduation, they have joined our institutions back, except 1 or 2 for some very genuine reasons. Where do you get this opportunity? You get education, you get employment soon after education, and while you are educating also, you are getting some stipend and income. And after all that, you become an independent, capable, self-confident girl in the society. You can face any challenges that come to you. And what it has done, force multiplier again, or what you call ripple effect. These girls, when they went back to their same villages where people had objected for their further studies, they became inspiration for the girls around. They talk so well, they speak in English, they use gadgets, they use computers. The whole village is mesmerized by their progress. And now the other girls who are in the village, they're pestering their parents, please put us also into the same school and university. So you have created that effect because of that.
That's very nice.
first, it's a free medical school. This is the first of its kind attempted here in India. And again, the reason is to provide education to the rural poor who do not have the same level playing field when it comes to English education or when it comes to writing NEET exams. They are not at the same level as an urban child. So we wanted to provide them an opportunity, and free will help them to continue their medical education. And in our country, we need doctors, nurses, paramedics at the rural level. 75% of the medical staff or medical professionals are catering to 25% of the population in urban areas, whereas 75% of the rural population gets only 25% of the manpower or healthcare professionals. So that's where the crisis is, and COVID highlighted that problem. Now our idea was to give it free first to ensure that children are able to access medical education, and with gratitude they will go back to rural areas and serve them. That is the first door. The second, research is a very integral part because it's there in the name of the institution itself, and we put it on purpose because we realize that we have to find better solutions to country than just kind of dousing the fire when it is all caught up. So before it happens, preventive pathways and something that is predictive and precise. That is the need of our country, because we can't build tertiary care hospitals and cater to the need of everybody after they have fallen sick. We don't have that capacity. We cannot create that capacity for the size of country that we are. The only option is to prevent it, to predict the disease from happening before it happens, and prevent it in a precise way. So that is something that requires a lot more investment in the research side. With the kind of data at our disposal, we see close to around 3 lakh, 4 lakh patients a year. That data is very, very powerful, and we are working on that to, as I said, to find meaningful patterns and predict diseases before they happen and prevent it from happening. So that is why research becomes very important, and we are very happy that we are working with institutions like All India Institute of Medical Sciences and some programs under Stanford to create this kind of a research environment, innovation environment, and bring new ways of solving the same rural problems. So again, I said, this is value creation. This is value creation. When you invest in such an institution and research, you're creating value. You will have less employees taking leave, giving excuses for medical reasons, because everybody is healthy. And if somebody says, I'm not healthy, you can just check with us. And we will tell you they're perfectly fine because we have checked on them. So the idea is to create a social structure like this where everybody is mapped. Everybody's health is mapped and they're being tracked. And if there is a possibility that they will fall sick, they're advised on whatever lifestyle changes or medications they require, and we prevent a tertiary care emergency from happening. So that is where our research is largely going to focus.
Amazing, amazing. Problem that all of us would like to have your views on. Yes. The world we live in is quite demanding and very, very competitive, more so when you're heading organizations or a conglomerate, and you're playing that role of a leader in society. How can we maintain that balance of work, personal life, and also take a step towards our own inward journey of spiritual consciousness?
24 years from now, India will turn 100 years of independent nation. What is the unified vision that you envision when Bharat becomes 100 years old?
Nobody is hungry, nobody is uneducated, nobody is unhealthy, nobody is unsheltered. That is my first basic dream of a developed India. After that, everything else. Whether we are on Moon or Mars or Venus or Uranus, that's all after that for me. That is my vision of India, first 100 years, yes.
Sir, it was very inspiration of your thoughts of compassion and capitalism. Just I want your feedback on whatever the entrepreneurs now in climate mitigation crisis, like green hydrogen or clean energy, can they deliver with your compassion? Whatever you define, with that goal can they achieve?
I think these climate techs like green hydrogen and all are still a little distance away. They're all being just explored. But meanwhile, we would have done enough damage, isn't it, on the way? So I think the first technology we need climate tech is what, without that green hydrogen also, what can we do to run our companies more environmental friendly and in a better way? I think those technologies in the next 10-12 years will be more prosperous. Hydrogen and all the other things that we are talking about is perhaps still 10-15 years away. But in these 10-15 years, we can do enough damage to the planet. So my call to the entrepreneurs is that please find ways of mitigating that crisis within this decade itself. And that itself will become a very big business case, I'm sure, because world is becoming more and more conscious. We have targets on SDGs. How serious are we? That is a separate matter. But if as a country at whatever India at 100, we want to look good, that we have done right, we have to do it environmentally right. And there are several technologies. Starting with first, don't create such businesses which cause damage to the climate. Create businesses which are sustainable in the first place. And second, if there is already businesses running which is creating damage, find solutions to reduce the damage. Then go to a final stage of creating altogether a total environment friendly, energy based businesses, which is still some distance away. I think so. Meanwhile, we have lots of ground to cover, and these will be profitable businesses. As somebody was saying, there are carbon credits, which is becoming another market of its own. You commit sin and I will wash off your sins. That is the idea of carbon credit. But whatever, at least it is doing some good, right? So the idea is that this will prosper and people will come after you, they will ask for you. I'm not talking about how profitable or whether you will be a unicorn or not, but definitely you will be a profitable, sustainable and a business with a purpose and value. That is possible in this decade for sure.
Good evening, Guruji. First of all, thank you for all your service. I'm Venkatesan Pillai from Dallas, Texas. I'm part of a NGO. I'm a philanthropist, a group called Nanban Foundation. We also work with a similar thing, zero hunger, education, and women empowerment. One thing that I see here in India lagging is youth philanthropy. Normally entrepreneurs start, do, and then giving back after that. What I believe is it has to be an integral part of it, as he was quoting in many times. And we need to take some action of, enabling youth philanthropy and talking about the kids, the young kids, about the social services and other things. My question here is, from your point of view, what are the steps that other entrepreneur can take that action, and what are the things that you do, your organization doing in terms of youth philanthropy, and what government has to do? In America, we have a lot of programs, especially focusing on youth philanthropy.
I understand the need for the youth philanthropy or creating that mindset in the youngsters. And there is no policy, there is no structured approach to it in India, at least as of now. In organizations like ours, philanthropy is a part of their lives. Everybody has to participate in service, it's a mandated thing. But for general educational institutions, corporates which are employing young professionals, there is no such system. But now I'm seeing a change. What I call it as the CSR is corporate social responsibility. That is how you should create ESR, employee social responsibility. And every employee should engage with the company to serve the society in some way. Many corporates are coming up with 1 day a year or something like that, which is a paid day for the people of the corporate to volunteer. So this volunteerism is slowly catching up. And corporates are talking about that. Is why I said you have to really focus on the S part of the ESG and include your employees, which are young professionals, into the S part. They can part with their resources if they have. A lot of matching programs are coming up in India too. In US it is a done thing. Employee, CSR, whatever philanthropy is matched with the corporate philanthropy. But in India also it is beginning to happen. And I think in the next 10, 15, 20 years we will see it grow. Employees will be engaging with things. And at the educational level, policy side, I want to tell through this forum to the governments and policy makers, please include social service as a part of their educational pedagogy. Don't just teach them science, maths, physics, chemistry and make them big brains, but also open their social side to it. And we had done an experiment with a local regional engineering college which is here. There are 2 credit courses were created on rural development. It doesn't exist in any of the regular mainstream colleges and education system, but it was created. And what it did is, it would take the children to the nearby villages and just expose them to what's happening over there. And many of the girls from that colleges, they saw the problem with girls' hygiene, So they started bringing hygiene products with them out of their own whatever pocket monies. Nobody funded them, but they were moved by the problems. They bought pencils, rubbers, notebooks, chalk boxes for the schools, rural schools. So you sensitize them to the need of the rural area. No funding was given to them. They were just given a credit course, because if there is no credit course, then they would not take this program seriously. So what policymakers can do is create a proper course, a structure for rural development or social service, and mandate it as a part of their educational pedagogy. They have to go out, see the rural areas and serve there. You don't have to do much. Take them to the rural areas. They themselves understand there is a problem and need. And young generation, as I said, they are very different. This, not millennials, but the Gen Z, because I deal with them. They are all a part of our university. Very open-minded. They are little painful at times. They question too many times, and you have to keep answering them. You can't just hush them like our generations. It's not possible anymore. But it's an investment that you must make in them by answering the questions. But they are very philanthropic in their approach. They may not be religious necessarily. They don't like rituals and orthodox ways of doing things. But they are very, very sensitive to social needs. They feel that they are responsible for the societal problems, and they are environmentally more active. And I think this is the generation that needs to be groomed. Some policy mandation is necessary. Like if there was no CSR of 2%, how many corporates would have come forward and given that? Today it is mandated, so they're doing, and organizations like us are benefiting. Similarly, if social service is mandated all the way from class 1 till their post-graduation, I'm sure it will do a lot good to the country by sensitizing them to the problems of the country. That is the policy ask that I have from the government, and we ourselves have rural development courses designed in our own university. The children go out to the local villages and help the people and solve the problems. So that is already a part of it. So I think that mandation will really help, and corporates should create this employee engagement with social service as the motivation and incentivize them. Who knows, pay them a little extra salary for that day. They will go happily and do the work and come back. So do something for them, and matching program, matching grants, please bring it up. Because employees cannot pay much, they can give a little part of their income, but they feel that is so little that it won't make a difference. So they hesitate from giving even that. But if the corporate backs it saying that you give and I will 1:2 or 1:3, I will do it, they will happily do. And corporates also in the process will be able to engage with the employees better. So these 2 policy changes can really help.
It's like 2 things. If you take Chandrayaan, what we have launched, it's like a close to 600 crore to 1,000 crore, where it is going to the moon and trying to do the, all the research on that. But just you have given a statement like close to 400 million people, they're going on the hunger. So which one is on the priority? From the government standpoint as well as a private organization, of course, it's a human life is more important than research, right? So how do you balance, those things, when compared to the other country and then India? I'd love to hear your thought.
I think we have to have some short-term goals and some long-term goals, like everybody has, even the corporate has. In the short term, we have to allocate some resources, energy and time to solve some immediate problems which are becoming a crisis. And also have a certain long-term vision where we allocate certain resources, time and energy to solve long-term problems. So everybody should have this balance of vision. And I think that's where private sector or governments have to solve some short-term immediate problems. Somebody who's going hungry to sleep, what gratitude does he have for the country? And what does he think of those who are eating their stomachfuls and sleeping peacefully? The kind of social unrest that it can create, social polarization that it can lead to. You cannot operate businesses in such an environment then. So you have to solve some short-term problems now by feeding, educating or protecting them, some social protection mechanism. At the same time, you also have to dedicate your some energies towards long-term vision to not make it happen again. So it's a balance that every corporate, every government has to find. So even as an NGO, we also have short-term and long-term goals. So we invest certain resources in short-term problem solving, certain resources in long-term solutions. So that balance has to be found everywhere.
So I have witnessed day before yesterday and yesterday also I visited the Prashanti Niketan at Kodapaka, Siddipet, and I really excited to see how girls are really how the interns who studied in this Sadguru medical college and they came back as interns and their excitement in getting that internship, although they are from the underprivileged families, how they are having the high career goals, and they even a couple of them like Madhuri are the gold medal winners from President G. So I feel that the world is really very unequal to the women in the history, and we need from on the women empowerment perspective, we need a ripple effect of the policies to make this world or the next 5 years or the 10 years in terms of the policies, there should be a ripple effect. It is not on the one maternity policy which gets extended to 6 months. Should be in all the ways the women empowerment policies or everything should be done. I would like to know a couple of
Pranam Sadguru. This is Dr. Hari Krishna Maram, founder, Global Economic Forum and Vision Digital India. We really appreciate the wonderful work your group of initiatives are doing across the world, not only in India. I keep traveling and meeting a lot of people. So the kind of initiatives were taken in Colombo, Sri Lanka, building a hospital and different places. So I just would like to ask you today, India is overtaken China in population. Today we are at 1.45 billion people. And the greatest advantage what we have, unlike any other country in this world, is our demographic dividend, the youth. So in the next 2 decades, how this youth, the demographic dividend of India, is going to help India to reach to the #1 position what we are talking or we are dreaming?
Now, demographic dividend is the common word that we have used for decades now. But is it really happening is the question that we have to ask. We have 250 million school-going children in the country. 60 to 80% of them go to government schools. 1 million teachers are missing from the government schooling system. And we are talking about demographic dividends. We have the largest population of malnourished children in the world by numbers. And we are talking about demographic dividends. We have mortality, maternal and child mortality, which is still far, far above the permissible levels as per the WHO. And then we talk about demographic dividends when young mothers are dying and children are stillborn. So we have a long way to cover before we talk about demographic dividend. Demographic dividend does not happen in just few urban pockets. If we want the true demographic dividend of the country, then we have to go to the real problems where there can be a disaster if we don't address those needs now. That's where we need everybody's participation. And demographic dividend will happen only if we make it happen. It won't happen on its own. Demographic disaster can happen on its own. Dividend has to be made to happen. And that needs including rural geographies, going back to my same point, include rural education, rural healthcare, rural nutrition, rural skill building, rural infrastructure. All that is what is going to lead to the demographic dividend. So as I said, if that happens, $5 trillion is a done thing. You will go much beyond that. That's my view.
I actually see two people with mics, so these will be the last two questions. One here and...
He has secured a mic for himself.
Yeah, and she has as well, so...
Sadguru, namaskar.
Namaskar.
And I'm happy to know the initiatives you have taken. And we all know, like, Narendra Modi ji's declared the next, including this year, 25 is Amrit Kal. And to make it really an Amrit Kal, I think he's trying a lot. What is your, I know, you're saying, again, the same point, rural and all, but any other points from you are the way in which the Bharat is progressing? Any say on that? I would like to hear from you.
That's very kind of you to appreciate our work and also ask about what is happening at the leadership level, at the country's leadership level. I think we have got a very visionary leader at this point in time, and that's acknowledged and accepted not just by our country but by the world. And for the global south, definitely he is the leader that people are looking up to. And that's been accepted from public forums by global south leaders. So the vision of Amrit Kal itself is a great vision. Somebody at 75th year of independence says that next 25 years we are going to build a developed nation. It's a great vision. And not just it is about economic development. It's about the development which is inclusive. That is the bigger vision of the Prime Minister, which really I am very happy about. Even when the agricultural startup funding was coming down and things like that, they came up with the Agriculture Accelerator Fund. Immediate interventions, quick interventions. That is the key to this development, and that is what this leadership is able to achieve. Highly efficient system. A very quick decision making. Of course, the results of it takes time to show. You sow a seed today, you don't expect the fruit tomorrow. And we must give chance to the leadership to make it happen over a period of time. And I think some of the very big policy decisions which have been made in the last couple of years are very, very futuristic, very progressive, but unfortunately its results cannot be seen the next day. We can't unduly punish the government for that. We must give them a little more time and tenure to prove themselves right. That needs a little more time, but at the policy level, tremendous policies, from MSME policies to even startup ecosystem policies. The kind of support is coming from the policymakers is amazing. I don't think anywhere in the world you're getting that. Make in India, the kind of incentives, I don't see that happening in most of the parts of the world. And that is the reason why from 470 startups we are 84 or 83 or whatever thousand startups today. It's only because of the right kind of policies, and that is the biggest contribution of the government. Few asks I have still from the startup point of view. I think they need a little more push, especially when they're market ready. Giving them funding at the beginning just to start the product development is one thing, but testing it out, and when it is what you call, technologically ready for the market, they need another set of funding at that point of time to make it go to the market. And that also is something that policy in startup ecosystem can think about. Seed funding and angel funding is one thing. That's what is happening at that point of time. You are going to VCs, angel investors, they're called angel investors, so you go to them. And then you go to these other funding agencies, but they're very exacting, very demanding. And what has happened in the last 3 years, most of these venture capital funds have come from abroad because the interest rates were low and there was a good opportunity here. Now all that is going back. And what you call as funding winter has taken over. This is the time when policy people have to intervene and make sure their funding is available to startups which are already on their way to the markets. They should not get aborted halfway through because of the lack of funding. And that's where I think the policy must cover the entire spectrum of startup ecosystem, not just give them the initial seed investment to start it off, but they must see to that the product goes to the market. Until then, they should hold the startups. That is one policy change or intervention that I think I expect from the leadership. But we are very fortunate at this point of view. We have very good leadership, very decisive leadership, and that's what will make all these dreams that we have come true, I feel.
How do you manage your anger? Because us as entrepreneurs, there are so much of mood swings. We need to constantly have that patience, which sometimes we lose. As all of them were talking about various policies, but the first thing comes in is a sanity check for ourselves. How do we manage that in terms of all the mood swings? And how do you personally manage your mood swings and anger?
That's a very personal question. But for the benefit of all like that. See, our anger does not come from our personal failures, because we are here instrumenting God's will. So why should I get angry with myself or anybody who is doing their job purely with absolute selflessness, especially in our organization? Everybody is selfless. You go and check. From the gatekeeper till the chairperson, everybody is working selflessly. They may be getting a salary, but that is not the lookout. They are here to serve this community, and that purpose is there. And everybody is doing their very best. Some people may sometimes fall short, inadvertently, not on purpose. Nobody does it on purpose. So the reason to get angry with them is very little. But I do fake anger at times just to set things a little right. Sometimes you have to raise your voice and do things so just to get people serious about what they're doing. But that's not real anger. Real anger comes when you have ego, that you are the doer and you failed because these people did not support you, and you failed because you missed a step or two, and you start blaming yourselves, you start blaming others. It comes from a lot of doership and ego. But when you're an instrument in the hand of God, these issues are easily handled. So I think first thing that I was telling you, learn to be an instrument of that higher divine power which has chosen you to execute a will of its own, and you are just instrumenting that will. Then your issues with anger and mood swings will come down drastically. And even if it happens, let us say somehow you miss that whole feeling and then you start sucked into this whole anger. See, the thing is that you have to be watching out for the symptoms of it. When you are going on a road, you see a car coming on the opposite direction, you immediately get alerted, you give way so that you don't meet with an accident. Anger is like that, though it comes very swiftly, but you have to keep watching these patterns. And once you can get hold of these patterns in you, that these are the reasons when it triggers of my anger, you are more aware. And next time you are able to handle it better. You may still get angry for all said and done, but this time you are angry by being aware that you are getting angry, and not just getting angry without being aware. Next time you'll be even better at it. You'll start watching, these are the symptoms, and this is the fellow who is definitely going to trigger me off. So better I find another way to go away. I don't want to confront people and test my patience and my anger abilities. That's not required, just avoid. I always tell them, wherever there is a possibility of temptation, just take another route, even if it's longer. Avoid such situations where you have to unnecessarily get into that. But become aware of your weaknesses. Start working on them. Start working by taking time. And when you get angry, first thing you should do is leave the place. Leave the place. Don't try to confront and don't try to, give it back to them. Just leave the place at once. Half of your anger will disappear. Drink a glass of water, sit in a quiet corner and do anything that you like to do so that you take some time to overcome that. Just don't react. That is the thing which you have to manage over.
I am Dr. Kiran. I am from Hyderabad. I head an incubator. I am a teacher. And this is the second edition of ISF that I am attending. I attended the first one too. So I thought this forum is more than a who's who of the Indian startup ecosystem. I also see this as a think tank of the Indian startup ecosystem. And I really liked and I could resonate with the keyword that you used, that compassionate capitalism. Recently at Fab 23 Bhutan, I was actually asking the same question, but this forum is probably more the appropriate forum for our country to ask this question. So My question is, you were talking about social entrepreneurship and trying to give benefit to the beneficiaries who are not able to afford the benefits, the solutions. So is there any way that the ethico-legal, socio-political system that we have can actually allow at some level a community IP system that is led by the government, driven by the government with the support from the think tank, so that we can actually have solutions that don't really look for profit or scaling up? Because the social problems that we have, the social entrepreneurship, I'm sure the people here in the room will vibe with it, they cannot really always build solutions that are scalable. The solutions are very much close to the niche that they target, and there is no profit there. So can we actually build a community IP system of some kind, which can also bring certain economic viability to the social entrepreneurship? I wanted to hear from you because I really love that keyword. Thank you for that. Compassionate capitalism. Thank you, Guruji.
I think we are thinking on those lines, and some of the initiatives like the government took, like social stock exchanges and all that stuff, is towards building a kind of an investment channel for social entrepreneurship. However, it is still at a very nascent stage in India. It's not as evolved as western side of the world, but I think it is coming there. In the future it will happen. Meanwhile, we are also, I think tomorrow Jay Garu knows that we are also launching a forum called Rural Economic Forum. Something on the lines of World Economic Forum, which is going to, it's not just a think tank, but it's also a platform for like-minded people to join hands and support these kind of rural initiatives beyond the demands of profitability and things like that. It's a genuine cause, it needs to be solved, and we want to engage with governments, we want to engage with industry, we want to engage with like-minded NGOs and people's participation, public participation at large. So something like that is in the offing. It will take a few years before this matures and really makes an impact. But yes, your idea is very much in motion at this point in time.
So thank you so much, Swamiji, for this session.
I must have the last word.
Oh yeah, please.
So thanks to you for having organized this and come and asked the kind of question that will help everybody. And my ask is there from this forum, Nothing comes for free, as they say. No free lunches, but here of course it is free. But the idea is, each one of you is capable of impacting so many lives. You have so much of potential within yourselves as an individual and as a corporate or a company that you're launching. Please keep a part of your efforts, energies and resources for a social cause. It need not be here, it need not be now, but make sure that in a disciplined way, earmark your abilities, your skills, your knowledge, your resources for some social cause or the other, through some organization or the other. Second piece of advice I will give you, you are in business, you are supposed to create profits. Don't get into opening foundations and charities and make a mess of both the business as well as the charity. Your core competence is business, please do it well, do it ethically, do it right, be profitable. Leave the charity to charitable organizations, because there are two different skill sets and you don't mix them both. When you are a big corporate, large corporate, you can afford a huge foundation with a lot of people. It's a different thing, but business mindset should not be applied in charity, and charity mindset should not be applied in businesses. So make sure that you keep these things too clear of each other. I think that is the way to a prosperous society. Do well, all the best to whatever for you to do, whatever you're doing, do it well, do it as an example for everybody else to follow. Leave behind footprints for others also to cross the bridge, cross the chasm. And I think this is a very punya bhuvi, this is a very sacred land. And this is my personal experience, that anything that we have thought about here with a pure heart, with pure sentiments, it has always succeeded. And one example is this very startup festival last year in October, when it was launched for the first time. It was in a very nascent infant stage. Jay Garu was himself surprised that how did it happen even in that short while. And today when I see 125 term sheets being signed, and that's a huge encouragement to the startup ecosystem. And I'm sure all this will lead to a lot of good, not just to you, at your company and employees, but to the society at large. Let's not forget that part of our responsibility beyond the call of duty, compassion side of the capitalism. Let's keep that as the focus, that as the North Star, that as our guiding principle in every business that you undertake. So I wish you all the very best, and I thank Jay Garu and the entire team, volunteers of ISF. Also 100 of our university students are volunteering during this event. Most of them have come from rural India. They never knew how to speak in English. They didn't know how to deal with people. But you must be meeting them here and there. Wherever you meet them, shake their hands, pat their backs, and then only you go back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
About the startup ecosystem, subscribe to my Startup TV.